Hi, in this video I'll be going over the C# video tutorials. In this video we'll be discussing radio buttons and checkboxes, so this is a continuation of the playlist C#, the C# video playlist. So radio buttons and checkboxes are GUIs, or graphical user interfaces, commonly. So GUIs commonly use radio buttons and checkboxes to let the user select items. So radio buttons are useful when you want the user to select one choice from several possible choices. So it's like you can think of a radio button as like an online multiple choice test. So you only select one of the button, like one of the little circle checkbox things, which are basically they're called radio buttons. If you weren't a coder, you wouldn't know that, because that's kind of an old term. They are an old GUI that's still used today. Perhaps you'll use them if you sign up for some kind of app. Sometimes you have to pick if you're like male or female, or whether you're over 18 or something. So we'll do an example. The radio buttons are useful when you want the user to select one choice from several possible options. So basically radio buttons come from the old kind of idea of like older cars, where they had radio, like a radio in a car, and when you selected when you selected like when you played a radio station, the other one would pop out when you press one in. That still kind of happens maybe with other electronic kind of radios, if you have one or something. When you select a radio station, another one should stop, or it should just kind of be it just plays one station at a time or something. Don't get these confused with checkboxes. But a radio button may be either selected or deselected. Each radio button has a small circle that appears filled in when the radio button is selected. So when the button is deselected or not selected, the button is just empty. In most cases it'll be like a white color, and when it's filled in it'll be like a black color. That's in most cases, not always. So there can only be one selection at a time. So if there's 3 options, such as coffee, tea, and like pop, you can only select one. So you could select like tea, and so that one will be filled in, and the other 2 they'll just be blank. So at runtime, only one radio button in a group may be selected at a time. Clicking on a radio button selects it. So you have to click it. You might be able to use tab, but when at runtime, so when the app runs, only one button in a group may be selected at a time. So clicking on a radio button selects it and automatically deselects any other radio buttons in the same group. We call this mutually exclusive. We call this so it's a we call this mutually exclusive selection. I was going to say mutually exclusive selection. I guess it could be either or. But basically that's what it is. That's a term you might get tested on. So it differs from checkboxes, where you could select more than one at the same time. So when you want to create a group of radio buttons on a form, use the radio button control. So just back to the screen here. So we'll just click on the tool. We'll click on the designer. Then the toolbox. Radio buttons should be selected. What's happening here? Sorry, we should have radio buttons in this. In these options. So we have radio buttons there. As you can see right there, I'm using Rider. But if you have Visual Studio, whatever, it'll be in there as well, in your toolbox. So when you want to create a group of radio buttons, you just select them, you use the radio button control. And the drag and drop, you can just get them from the toolbox. We'll learn how to create those objects later on. So radio button controls are normally grouped in one of the following ways. You place them inside a group box control. So that's one way to do it. All radio button controls that are inside a group box are members of the same group. You can place them in a panel control, so in a group box or in a panel. So we've gone over group boxes and panels in the previous tutorials. Maybe within the last 5 or something, 5 or 10 tutorials. So you can see the playlist for that if you don't understand what they are. So you place them inside a panel control. So you can place them in a group box or you can place them in a panel control. All radio button controls that are inside a panel are members of the same group. So the third option is you can place them on a form but not inside a group box or a panel. All radio button controls that are on a form are not inside a group box or panel are members of the same group. So that's a little confusing. So either way, they're all members of the same group. I don't know why the docs kind of mention that. But obviously, so you can just think of that you can put them in a group box, you can put them in a panel, or you can put them in just on the form. I think that's actually, so these are the normal ways. I'm not sure if we'll be learning about any more layouts. We might be, but I think the main layouts, what is that? I think the main layouts, I'll just delete that, I'm not sure what that is. What is that? I don't know what this is. It's a panel, but it won't let me delete it. There we go, okay. Alright, so we have, so basically the two, well, not layouts, but containers, the two basically most common containers are group boxes and panels. So you can put the radio buttons in those, or you can just put them on the form itself. So those are the 3 ways. The most common ways, there might be some other containers we haven't talked about yet. We'll see if we have any more to talk about. But those are the main ones. We'll probably just be focusing with those for now. Okay, so basically we can have an example here. We might do it. I probably will. So we have, basically we can have so we can have a group box. So let's just try that then. So let's say we have a group box and then a group box control and the group and a panel control. So one group box on the left, one panel on the right. And we can throw some radio buttons in there. Okay, let's just go for that then. So we have let's just say we have an example here. So let's say we have a group box. Let's just place it here. Whoops. And let's say we have a panel. Okay, those aren't exactly perfect, but you get the idea. Let's just say we have, so let's change. We don't really need to change the text, we know how to do that. But let's just say we want some radio buttons, so we'll click radio buttons, throw some here. Okay, so it's just radio button 1. So we can copy it, radio button 2. We're going to be getting into this exactly how to do this properly. But technically these are all in the same group then. So I guess it's kind of good to know that. So if you just have some random radio buttons on a form, for example, here. Whoops. Not sure what happened there. I think I copied the whole form and pasted it on. Okay, so if we have, so these radio buttons just on the form, they're, okay, you can make those bigger. Whoops. But these ones here, these 4, if you can see the mouse, hopefully, so this one, that one, and that one, those 4. Radio buttons 4, 5, 6, and 7, those are in the same group. I think that's what they meant. Not group box, but they're just grouped together, generally. So they kind of work together in that case. So if you had one up here, had one down here, had one over here, and had one over there in the corners. If you selected one of them, then the other 3, I believe, you wouldn't be able to select those. But if you then selected this one down here in the let's say the top left one was selected, then the top right, bottom left, and bottom right would be unselected, right? Those are radio buttons. So let's say you then select the bottom right one, radio button 7 instead of radio button 4, if that says 4. Then radio button 4 will become unselected because these are all in the same group. Now if you have these ones in the, let's say you have, well let's just say you have some more here first in the panel. So let's say then you have one radio button selected in group box 1. So let's say radio button 1 was selected, then radio button 2 and radio button 3 would not be selected because you can only select one at a time. So then if you selected radio button 8, then radio button 9 and 10 in the panel here would be unselected, so only radio button 8 would be selected. Now if you had radio button, was that 4 selected, and you also selected radio button 1, that would be okay because they're in different groups. Therefore you could have, there's 3 groups here. There's the form, the radio buttons on the form, there's the radio buttons in the group box 1, and the radio buttons in the panel 1, whatever, the panel. So there's 3 different groups of radio buttons. That means you could have 1 selected from each group, therefore you could have 3 radio buttons selected. So hopefully that makes sense. So let's go back to some notes here. So radio buttons are mutually, no, I spelled that wrong, mutually exclusive. What was the last word? Selected. mutually exclusive selection. So basically they're just mutually exclusive, which means you can only select one at a time. Or only, they didn't even have a definition in these docs, but only one can be selected out of the rest. So only one can be selected out of the whole group. Out of the group, they did use the keyword group. So that's pretty much just the main point that you'll, if you're taking this in school, you'll get tested on that for sure. I think in Java and Android I both got tested on. They had the same question in all of those, and even in C# I guess they'll probably test. Or yeah, I guess they tested me on that as well. Alright, so we have pretty much. So if we have, so the radio button controls text property. The radio button controls have a text property. So this holds the text that is displayed next to the radio button circle. If you're wondering what that is, so that is this text beside the circle. That's the radio button's text property. It's basically the text associated with the radio button. So you could set that to whatever. If you have like chips, you could go like Miss Vicky's. What's the other one? Kettle cooked or whatever, kettle. And the last one could be like Lay's or something. So you have 3 different chips. So you could just select one. So you could name them whatever you want. Whatever it is, you could just name it. So that's the text property. So radio button controls also have a checked property. After my keyboard, what does it do? This writer does this thing where it just stops typing. I'm not sure why. Like the keyboard just stops working. Unless it's my keyboard that's going. Let me try actually something. No, it's not my keyboard because I can type outside writer right away, so I think it is a glitch in writer. Okay, now it works. That's weird. Unless it was my keyboard, let's have to try that right away next time. Okay, so the radio buttons. So this is a point here. This is a point here. So radio. Actually, could have went with a dash. So radio buttons. So radio button controls checked property. Radio button control checked property. So radio button controls have a check property that determines whether the control is selected or deselected. Basically checked or unchecked. I don't know why they said selected and then said checked. Those are actually completely different things in Android and Java. So sometimes you can use them the same, but in other times you can't. Sometimes you could say if radio button dot is selected, or you could say like radio button dot is checked. That works across Java, Android, well, basically because Android uses Java, but also uses Kotlin. I guess in C# it's similar. You have to be careful. Sometimes you have to check with the selected keyword or checked, but it's I don't know why they call it a checked property. They should have said selected property. So it's kind of confusing when you're referencing is selected, which was just checking if it's checked, and then there's also a method that's is checked, which works with checkboxes. So it's kind of confusing. I feel like Microsoft may have messed that up. Java sometimes too. They should have just kept it the same. Like either selected, then there's a selected property, but not a checked property. But you can't use is checked, which is a method, or like checked, but we'll talk about that in a sec. So radio button controls have a check property that determine whether the control is selected or deselected, which is confusing. So the check property is set to true, the check property is a Boolean property. Which means that it may be set to either true or false. Obviously it just has two states, on or off. Remember the switch I talked about, you can turn a light switch on or off. I talked about that recently. We went over Boolean, whether types or variables. So when a radio button when a radio button when the checked property is set to true. God, I spelled that wrong. The radio button is selected. So when the check property is set to true, the radio button is selected. Hopefully that makes sense. So when the radio button check property is set to true, the radio button then is selected. Remember, since radio buttons work as a group, each one will probably have a text property and a check property. So obviously if the radio button's checked property is set to false, then it is deselected. So by default, the checked property is set to false. So you can use a properties window to set the initial value of the radio button controls check property until we learn how to code it. Keep in mind that the check property is only one radio button in a group. So keep in mind that the check property of only one radio button in a group can be set to true at a given time. So in a group of radio buttons, basically you can only basically check one or select one to true at a time. So you can't have two that are true, you'll probably get an error. Okay, so when you set a radio button, controls check property to true, and the properties window, the check properties of all the other radio buttons in the same group automatically are set to false. I don't really like using the drag and drop, but just as the way that the Canadian university curriculum teaches, they go over the drag and drop first before they start coding the objects. Honestly, I'd rather just get into the objects right away. That stuff's easy to figure out, but like, I don't know why they do that. Android was a bit different. The curriculum I had for Android and Java, we just got right into the code. We didn't use the drag and drop too much. So maybe perhaps Microsoft wants you to learn the drag and drop first, I don't know. Okay, we got a few more examples here. A couple code examples and we'll end the video. Okay, about 26 minutes here, so we have some code examples in. Then we'll move on to checkboxes and we'll do the lab. Not in this video, so in the next video we'll start with checkboxes. So in code, you can determine whether a radio button control is selected by testing its checked property. Remember, it's a boolean, so you can check if it's true or false. So suppose a form has a radio button control named, choice 1 radio button. So we could have, for example, example 1, if choice 1 radio button, we don't have to go with choice 1, we can just go with radio button 1. If radio button 1 dot checked, so it's checked, not is checked. So I think in Java it's is checked, but in C# it's just checked, and it uses capitals. So if radio button 1 dot checked, it's interesting that they use checked. I thought you could also use is selected, but that might just be in Java and Android. Well, we can always test it out later. So if choice 1 if radio button 1 dot checked, which means, remember, you can call a boolean like this, which is asking if radio button 1 dot checked basically is equal to true, or yeah, so dot checked is equal to true. That's what it's really asking. And if this were if radio button is not checked, then we'd put a not. We'd put a not, like a logical not. Whoops, maybe I'll just keep that. So logical not, like we'd probably double quote this. Double parentheses this, like this. You might need to do that. If not, you could just do it like that. That would mean if it's not, now that would mean that if radio button 1 dot checked is equal to false or points to false. That's what they really are asking. It's a tricky concept for a new programmer. But basically, if radio button 1 dot checked, which means if radio button dot 1, if radio button 1's check property, is that what we said? Check property is equal to true. That's what it's asking, so it can be a little bit tricky to understand. My keyboard just ended again. Let me try that. Working on there, not working in here. That changed the language or something? What happened there? Yeah, I think I changed the language. Okay, must have hit a shortcut on my keyboard to change the language. So if radio button 1 dot checked, which is asking if the radio button 1 is checked, then messagebox dot show show a dialog box and say so I don't know why they use the word selected if they have both methods, but you selected radio button 1. That's pretty much it. It's pretty easy to use if radio button 1 dot checked, which means if checked is equal to true, which means that it's checked. Then radio button 1, message box dot show, a pop-up window will come up, which will tell you selected radio button 1. So pretty easy to use, nothing crazy. So notice that, okay, so let's see what else we have. Yeah, so notice how we did not have to use the double equal sign operator. That's what I talked about already, to explicitly compare the check property to the value true. So this is the same as this code. If radio button 1 dot checked points to true, that's what I said, right? Radio button 1 dot check points to true. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. Okay. Then message box dot show. Just copy this thing here. Oh, I can just write it out. Message box dot show. You selected radio button 1. Alright, so we have just another example here. We may have to do this one in the GUI. Let's just see, because this one needs a GUI element to show. We could try doing it now, so let's just try that and see if I can delete these, which might be a pain. We might have a bunch of errors. We don't actually have to run the code though, I don't think. So let's just go with a panel. Actually, nope, let's go with a group. Group box, not group, sorry. In Java it's called group, so it's very similar to very easy to get confused pretty much. The methods are almost exactly the same too, which is, in a way it's good. Well, it is good. It's actually great because of the more languages that you have that are almost the same, or the same, then it's easier to code because you already know. Which makes it a lot better. So let's just here select your favorite fruit or whatever, food, vegetable. Okay, so let's go with the group box, which doesn't have to be that massive. They usually do them like this anyways. Okay, so we have our group box here. Text property, we'll change that to choose fave. Let's go with vegetables because it's almost dinner time here. Choose your favorite vegetable. Fave, we just go with the short form of that. So then we'll put some radio buttons on here. I'm just gonna kind of just pick something random. So we'll just place them somewhere. Can we make these bigger? Auto size. Is there an auto size? Set them to true. Choose the font to something 36 or something. There we go. Copy, paste that 3 times. Change the identifier of them. So we'll select the first one, radio button 1. Can we change this font size of this? we haven't done this yet. Okay, there we go. That's too big though. There we go. That looks fine. Change the font and spice it up, but it's okay. So choose fave vegetable, radio button 1, radio button 2, radio button 3. Okay, so there's nothing on there yet. Okay, so let's go with the first one. Let's change the identifier to something, anything. The first one we could just go with onion, whatever. Onion radio button, because fried onions are good. It's actually a trick if you're learning how to cook. If you fry your onion, you cut up a lot of onion, not too thin, but like not too thick either, like a little bit closer to the thin side, but not too thin. But if you make them kind of like medium size, and you fry your meats or fish in it, that's the starting point of pretty much all food should be fried. All your meat should be fried in onions. The reason someone will ask me, well, why would you do that? The reason is because it gives a really nice flavor to it, so just try it next time. Then you can put your favorite sauces in after that and add some garlic, and it'll be really good, I promise. You can go with like teriyaki, or you can go with whatever, Worcestershire, or anything. You get like Montreal smoke, throw that on there like the spice, add some salt to that, and you'll be cooking, trust me. You'll impress your partner with that. Alright, so we'll go with so if we have pretty much so let's just change the identifier for the rest of them. Actually, first let's just go with the text. We'll change the text to onion with an S. Because you want more than one. You're stocking up. Alright, so you have onions, so radio button 2. Let's say you have pretty much this one, whatever, we'll just go with some other vegetable that's good. Let's go with potatoes. Those are good. Is that just one O or an E? I think there's an E on it. Forgot how to spell, like I said, so potato radio button. No, that messed up. Potato radio button. Can't see that font. Potato radio button. Okay, so then we'll go with potatoes for the text property. Something else that goes. Actually, we could have went with garlic, but that's fine. Third one, let's just go with garlic then. I was gonna go with tomatoes. Those go good with pasta sauces and stuff. So let's just say tomato. I think it's just an O on that. Tomato radio button, just like that. We'll go with the text property to tomato. Or did we say garlic? That's okay, that's fine. Mess that up. With the S. Oh nope, there's just a... Is that correct? Hopefully I spelled that right. Okay, so actually, you know what? I think potato just has an O on it, but singular just has an O, but with more than one, it has an E. Sorry, an S. Yeah, an E and an E as well. Forgot how to spell here. I think tomatoes is the same, actually. Get confused with that. Sorry. Haven't wrote essays in a while. Just losing my spelling actually for some reason. Maybe I'm just getting too old. If you find someone who's getting older who can't spell, don't blame them, because for some reason you forget how to spell words. You'll notice that if you're only in like first year university or something, second year, you'll see. Just give it like 8 years and you'll be forgetting how to spell words too. Don't laugh at me. Okay, so we have that should be pretty much it actually. So if we go to our code then why is this form 1 load? I think I clicked something and it generated that event by accident. Actually, we could just have an OK button as well. So let's throw a button on here. Kind of taking a bit longer than expected. That's okay. So we have identifier. We could just go with OK button. Then we could go with text to OK. Then we'll just go with the fonts actually just a bit bigger. That should be fine. Okay, so then we have our event handler now. So we'll just click on our OK button to generate that start of the event handler. So we'll comment that out. So all we really need to do now is we're going to use an else if. I'm not sure if we've used that yet, but we can use it here. So we have, not sure if the notes actually, the docs that I have actually went over that. I know how to do it, it's fine, it's the same thing, I'll show you guys. Same thing every time. So if, what's our first one? Onions. Yeah, so if onion radio button dot checked, then message box dot show you chose onions. Let's go select it actually. Why is it underlined? Just a warning, okay. So you selected onions. So this event is going to be dependent on, or it's going, so the OK button is going to listen. So what it's listening for is a click. Once the click occurs, then it's going to react to the click. It's going to say, okay, well, once you clicked it, if onion radio button dot is checked, remember only one that can be checked at a certain time. Then a pop-up window, a dialog box will pop up, and it'll say you selected onions. Else if, so you just do it like that. So you can do an else basically, but it said here, because remember usually with an else you wouldn't have a conditional, but you could have an else if, which is kind of just basically like this. It's the same thing. It's similar, but it's different. So else if, then if we have potatoes, so P-O-T-A-T-O-E, I think I spelled that wrong. Radio button, that's fine. So potato radio button dot checked. Then same thing. Message box dot show you selected potatoes. Else if, what's the last one? Tomatoes. If to tomato radio button dot checked message box dot show you selected tomatoes. So pretty much I don't think I really need to run this, but if you, let's just say you did run this, if you selected onions and hit OK, a dialog box would pop up and say you selected onions. The next time if you close that dialog box and select tomatoes, then the same thing would happen for tomatoes. A dialog box would pop up and tell you selected tomatoes. And if you close the dialog box and then selected potatoes, then hit OK, a dialog box will pop up and say you selected potatoes. So that's pretty much it. Those are radio buttons. You can just select one at a time. We can use them to do things. You can just leave them as they are. Just remember that once again they have two properties, a text property and a check property, and they're mutually exclusive. So those are the key points. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you guys like the video. If you guys like the video, you can like and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to support the channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.